Welcome to this week's podcast. And guess what? It's my 300th episode. And so while I open this bottle of champagne, and before we get on to this week's episode, where I have the most amazing guest, Mark Condi, I just wanted to take this moment to thank you, each and every one of you, for being with me along this journey. You know, when I started this podcast, because I love the hospitality industry and the people that I've had the honor and privilege of getting to know and being part of their journeys from, over the last 31 years, some of them, those young guys and girls, with their first jobs, picking up glasses through to where they are as CEOs. But it's also the suppliers to the industry here in Australia, America, and Europe that I've met at different association meetings, various conferences that I've attended or spoken at. And I love this industry because it is such a feeling of belonging, like everybody knows everybody or connected in some way. And I would honestly say, hand on heart, that the people that I meet, I always feel like I'm this conduit, that I can connect them with somebody who may be able to help them with an idea, or perhaps have done it before. I mean, why reinvent the wheel? And who I've ever put them in contact with have always reached out in a really positive manner, whether it's just a conversation, whether it's mentoring, coaching, asking about financials, marketing, whatever it might be. This industry is always willing to give, and that's why I love it so much. And when I did start this podcast all those years ago, my gosh, this is our 7th year, it was starting off with just interviewing the managers and senior team members in the hospitality industry here in Australia, as well as New Zealand. And then it has certainly expanded. And even today's episode with our 300th is the CEO of the Duxton Pubs, which is in South Australia, here in Australia, Mark Condi. And as I mentioned in the episode, I first met Mark, oh gosh, probably 20 years ago now, close to that, when he was a duty manager at Bankstown Sports Club, and being a part of his journey at the club, but then also as he's moved roles into the Justin Hems family group and now with Duxton Pubs. This is the journey that I've been on. So to each and every one of you, thank you so much for listening. Please subscribe. We are also now on YouTube, as well as Spotify and Apple and all the other platforms that you can listen to. The more people subscribe, the more that it gets out there, because truly I have the most amazing guests, I'm sure you would agree, that come to you from all around the world sharing their ideas. And I've already booked out for the first quarter of next year alone with people that are now coming to me saying, please can we be on the podcast to share our insights and experience for your listeners. So get on there. If you haven't subscribed, whether it's YouTube or one of the others, I'd love a review. I thought I'll ask for that plug because once again, the more reviews that we have, the further we go up in the rankings, and therefore more people get to hear about this podcast. But truly just listening to the podcast each week is what I love. So thank you so much. So here we go. Pop this. So congratulations, everyone, for the 300th episode. And as I said, for you being part of my journey. Take care and enjoy this week's episode. Bye. Welcome, everyone, to today's podcast. And oh my goodness, I am going back into the deep, dark days of my early days with the registered club industry. And I've been in it like 31 years now, when I met this very young duty manager at the time at Bankstown Sports Club, who was undertaking one of my programs. And I've seen him progress through his personal and professional journey over these decades. So it's lovely to finally have the one and only Mark Condi on my podcast. Now, Mark is joining us from South Australia. We were just having a joke for my overseas listeners. South Australia is in the middle of Australia, but down the bottom, it's known for the Great Australian Bight, but it's a state that's overlooked. Don't know why, we've got WA, we've got all the eastern seaboard, but it is a beautiful state for wineries, and that's what it's known for, as well as it's known for its state of churches, in Adelaide being its city, and a very strong German background as well in places such as Harndorf. So it's a beautiful place, and Mark was just sharing about settling into there. But let's get on with me introducing Mark. So Mark joined the Duxton Pubs group in January 2024 as CEO of Duxton Pubs, bringing extensive experience in the hospitality industry. Prior to this, he was the Group General Manager Commercial at Merivale and spent several years as CEO of Bankstown Sports Club. As I said in the beginning, I met Mark when he was a duty manager and he went through and progressed to CEO for a number of years, where he led significant growth and development. Mark is passionate about delivering exceptional customer experience and building high-performing, engaged teams. Known for his strategic insight, operational excellence, and people-focused leadership, he continues to drive innovation and success across Duxton's expanding pub portfolio. So welcome, Mark. It's just so lovely to see you here on just in the state next door, but it's great. So how are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Michelle, and thanks for having me here today.
Perfect. Look, I've got a number of questions, and I know my audience will be eager to hear about it because I'm always watching you on LinkedIn and seeing what the Duxton Pub group are also doing. Because once again, coming from South Australia, we don't always focus on that area, but it is certainly a group that is expanding and is making a difference to the hospitality industry, not just in South Australia, but across Australia itself. So since joining them in early 2024, what were your initial priorities as CEO and how have they shaped the group's direction so far?
Yeah, so what was really interesting about coming to this job is that I joined an entity that's backed by private equity that owns obviously Duxton Pubs, which is 26 pubs right across South Australia, from regional South Australia right through to metro.
Mm.
So it's a very diverse business. And what really excited me was working with a private equity firm backed by investors and high wealth families. But what was really interesting was Duxton Pub was actually only formed in 2020. Started with its first pub. Today, like I said, it's got 26. So it's grown very quickly in a very short amount of time. You've got to remember COVID was in amongst that as well.
Yes.
And so what that meant was a massive opportunity for me and also the team to what I used to joke and still joke is that there's actually more than low-hanging fruit. The fruit's on the ground. We just got to pick it up.
Yes.
And because of that, what that means is that it's because of that growth, which was so quick, we didn't really have the systems in place to leverage the group. So a lot of these pubs were operating really very much individually and with some support from head office or support office. But the opportunity was endless in terms of leveraging our buying power, leveraging our systems. So the first part was to really get everyone working together. And that's certainly shown a lot of benefit to the group. Things like introducing 7 rooms, which is a group reservation system for all of our restaurants, accommodation systems. So we had 4 different accommodation systems across the group, bring data properly if we've got 4 separate systems.
Yes.
Review tracker, which is a system we introduced to capture all of the customer reviews across the group. That's critical. We need to know what our customers are feeling at our venue. And so those sorts of things have provided us huge amounts of insights to really drive that strategy.
Yeah. And it's data is so important. You know, myself, I love data, even though I find statistics a bit boring. It's the comments that go with the data, after all these years of mystery shopping. And it's lovely to see that you've introduced it, got it together, because you're right, so many businesses have got different units that are not, different systems that aren't talking to each other, or they're not mining that data correctly to find out what they really need to know about what are the expectations, not just what we think our pub guests are wanting. It's about finding out, well, it's difference between what we think and what they're actually needing sometimes, isn't it?
That's right. And it's a really delicate balance, particularly for us, when you've got 2 pubs in Penola, for example. One's called the Royal Oak and the other one's called Prince of Wales. They're about 100 metres apart. The Royal Oak is a beautiful old heritage pub that very much captures the tourist market, whereas the Prince of Wales is very much a local community pub. It is very important that those pubs are identified as local Penola pubs and they don't miss the mark for their community. But it is also very important that we leverage the group structure and provide them those resources and that support to make sure they're making the best decisions.
Yes, yeah, it is. And it's interesting, isn't it? Even though you've got two pubs that are so close to each other, still being very, very different and very diversified. So over, since its, inception, and as you said, only 5 years ago to have grown to 26 pubs already. I even noticed yesterday on LinkedIn that you've at that Alma Tavern, you've just introduced the brand new Spritz bar. So it's always staying ahead of the curve and introducing something else. What do you think has been the key to scaling so successfully while maintaining that strong connection to local community?
Yeah, so I guess it's looking at each venue as a community venue and understanding, I guess, the demographic, the market, where we actually want to position it.
Mm.
So it's no different to, a classic example is Merivale, and I learned so much at Merivale, and I know we'll talk about that. But, Merivale owns the mum and dad local pub at Mascot, for example, called Tennyson, but then it also has Mr. Wong in the city.
Mm.
Very different businesses, and that's no
Yes.
different to what we have, which is, we've got these pubs that are very unique, and it's understanding the market in that area. And so the Alma was a great, great opportunity for us because the Alma traditionally was owned by footballers, AFL footballers,
Right.
superstars in South Australia. And so it very much had a football AFL clientele. And so
Mm.
when we bought it, a lot of those footballers moved on. But what we then tried to do was balance that between we're still a football club, we still show amazing AFL games,
Mm.
but we also have a beautiful outdoor space. We allow pets, we allow the families to come. We also still have a very young demographic in the area, and so putting the Spritz bar in is exactly that part, is
Yeah.
to target and create a space that those people will be happy to come to. And so it's been a journey. So when you initially acquire a venue like that, you will initially see a downturn because of that significant change from being a
Mm.
football-centric pub to what we've created. But we're now seeing the success of that transformation. And the Spritz bar was the last
Mm.
that we introduced only a couple of weeks ago, and we've got more to come.
Yeah. And I love how you mentioned, Mark, there that you've got such a broad demographic. And even though, it was perhaps, skewed to that more that football, that player, the person who enjoyed that game, it is about families and how beautiful to introduce pets. I think that's probably been the biggest rise that's come out of COVID. Everybody's got a pet that they want to take along, and having that there. So it's not sitting at home also means that people can enjoy and relax and spend more time with the community as well as their friends and being a part of it because they've got their pet with them. So it's great to see. And that Spritz bar looks fantastic with a few photos that you put up. So you can only imagine with the summer coming on that's ahead of us fairly shortly, that it will certainly be well used. So the Duxton team places great emphasis on respecting the heritage of each venue. Can you share an example where this philosophy made a significant impact in revitalising a pub or improving the customer experience?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that's excited me the most about our portfolio of pubs is just some of the beautiful heritage pubs that we have. Like Port Rawdon is a good example, or Royal Oak that I talked about. These pubs have been around for 150 years,
Gosh.
and they are just absolutely beautiful. What comes with that, though, is the heritage listing, which excites us, but then also a venue that requires significant capital
Yes.
to remain operational. And so it's getting that balance right of making sure that we stay true to the heritage of that pub and that community. I can assure you, and not just because we're in South Australia, but if we went in and renovated one of these heritage pubs and turned it into a modern decor, we would have a fight in our hands. So
Yes.
it is critical that we maintain that heritage.
Mm.
But we leverage that by trying to provide amazing food, amazing experiences, amazing
Mm.
beverage. And so, the example I used at Prince of Wales, the local Prince of Wales pub is very much a locals pub. We've just recently modernised that. We've created a really nice gaming room, a nice bar, and a nice food area. Whereas the Royal Oak, we've really stayed true to that heritage and made sure that everything we do, including the furniture, the carpet, the bar, remains a focal point to what it was almost 150 years ago.
Wow, gosh. And it is so important. We've lost so many beautiful buildings in Australia. I know, throughout the world, the new idea comes in. So let's tear it down and let's put, some concrete monolith in that we regret afterwards. So keeping that heritage, plus it's part of the town. It's that town's history, isn't it? And I always think to myself, I'd love for steps to be able to talk. When you look at beautiful stone steps and they're worn down and you think, my goodness, who's walked on these steps? What have they seen if they only had that voice? So I love that idea of keeping that heritage because it keeps that true connection and people can share, well, when I was here with my, granddad or my great granddad or whatever it might be, or, when we saw the men march off to war, all of those connect to that local pub, which is fantastic. You've led teams at Merivale and Bankstown Sports Club, two very different environments. How has your leadership style evolved over the years, and how have you adapted to meet the needs of Duxton's diverse team and portfolio?
Yeah, so I often think about this. So, even my 32 years or so at Bankstown Sports, progressing up, as you've said, from, picking up glasses when I was 18 to CEO, I was lucky enough to grow with the business and therefore learn and make mistakes. I mean, I think all of us agree that we've all made significant mistakes in our career, and the idea with those mistakes is that you learn from them. And so one of the things that I had to do at Bankstown as I progressed was to actually change the way I lead. And you get blunt feedback often that says, well, hang on, you need to be very different. And so I've managed to do that over time. And like I said, made many mistakes along the way. Moving to Merivale, obviously Bankstown Sports is a not-for-profit registered club, very unique industry in the world. Will always stay true to my heart. Going to Merivale, being a private business, very big business, probably 6 times bigger than Bankstown Sports, owned by the amazing Justin Hemis, but a very corporate structure. So it was a very different learning experience working for the 12 months that I was there, and I did have to tweak the way I led, and I had to learn really quickly because I was going into a pool of people that were very successful, very focused, and that 12 months, I learned probably more in that 12 months than I've learned in 10 years at Bankstown Sports and how they get things done. And that speaks to, I guess, the culture of the business and the way they're so good at F&B and the customer service in all of their venues. Then moving to Duxton, one of the things after leaving Bankstown Sports that I wanted to do was to actually broaden my experience. While I really thoroughly enjoyed the 32 years at Bankstown Sports, my learning and my growth needed to move out of that space and actually start to understand what the real world was like. Working with Justin did provide that. And now working at Duxton with private equity, high wealth net investors, all very much focused on return on investment. They're investing their dollar, they want a return, paying dividends, understanding all of those metrics has been a huge learning curve for me. And then also understanding South Australians, which we joked about at the start, is South Australia is very parochial, very passionate about their state. Customers are very passionate about locals. A good example of that is there's a local coffee shop chain called Chiobo here, and that was recently bought out by Gloria Jeans. And there was protests, there was uproars, there was petitions. And I think part of the strategy of Gloria Jeans was that they were going to rebrand them all Gloria Jeans, and I'm pretty confident now they're not, because that's not South Australian. And that's been a really a big learning experience for me, but also for a lot of people coming into South Australia. In terms of leadership, though, that's allowed me to think about how I lead. We've got a very different demographic of team here, very different to Merivale, and we're beholden to our investors. And so I've had to learn, particularly over the last couple of years, that I need to focus on what I'm good at and actually really encourage the best people to come and work and actually empower them to do their job. And that's probably the biggest learning experience right from Bankstown, is that as you become a better leader and the business get bigger, the only way you're going to be successful is to empower the team to do an amazing job and hopefully attract the best people.
Definitely. And I love that that piece about Gloria Jeans, because we're really connecting back to that customer service and the customer experience, and how important that local coffee shop, and as being, it sounds like, this is South Australia's coffee shop. How dare you come in and then want to change things, and it's people's pride, isn't it? It's that connection which is so important. Thank you so much for sharing about your leadership style too, because it's what we take away. And you're right, we all make mistakes in the early days, and sometimes we either make them in the later days. But we learn from that. I think that saying that if you say everything's perfect in business or everything's perfect in my role, I don't know all those if you're being true to yourself. We have to learn. We try things. If they don't work, hey, we get up and we try something different. And that's about growing both professionally as well as personally. But that connection with customer service, thinking about, you've got 26 pubs, both regional and metropolitan. How do you tailor that customer service experience to suit those different communities? You've got different pubs in different areas, and you've certainly got different, demographics. How do you go about that and your team, Mark?
So it's an interesting one. So, probably a really good example, and I feel like I'm picking on Prince of Wales and Cronulla. Beautiful, beautiful pub there, but it's very much a locals pub. And so when we introduced 7 rooms across the group, and as we talked about data capture, and 7 rooms is just an absolute amazing system that captures and allows people to make reservations, obviously at our venues, and allows us to capture data, allows us to communicate with those customers. The pub that we had the most resistance to implementing a system like that was Prince of Wales, because it's very much a locals pub. No one books; they just turn up. They want to eat. They interact with the staff at the bar. They have a couple of beers. They go home. And so the challenge for us was to try to encourage our staff there to try to capture as much data as we possibly can, while not losing sight of the fact that what was successful about that pub was that they could interact directly.
Yes.
And these people could turn up and just walk in and not have to worry about booking online or using an app.
Yeah.
And so each venue is very much different. In saying that, customer service is customer service. People want to be heard. People want to be acknowledged. People want that authenticity, and they want to feel acknowledged. And probably the big thing that I learned at Merivale was the surprise and delight. And that's where I think 7 rooms comes into it, where if you go to a Merivale venue, say at 11:30 in the morning, and obviously I was based at the head office in George Street and next to the Ivy there. And one of the first things that I noticed walking around at 11:30 in the morning was every single one of their restaurants in that precinct were having a briefing with their staff before they opened. So the chefs were out, all of their front the staff in the restaurant,
Yes.
all got together and they went through what they call a daily briefing. And in that briefing, they knew who was coming in to the restaurant for lunch, who were the VIPs, were there any special birthdays or engagements or any special occasion, and what were the specials, what were the wines that we wanted to sell, what were the deals that we had. And so every staff member knew who was coming in and what they had to do for the next lunch period.
Yes.
What that meant was that everyone got acknowledged. So if it was your birthday, everyone got acknowledged. And it was that surprise and delight which actually made a massive difference to people's day and their experience in the restaurant. And so we brought that on. And that's, I guess, how we managed to portray Prince of Wales. So saying, well, look, if you don't use a system like that, we often don't know that there is a special occasion.
Yes.
We also don't know that they're potentially a VIP because they're there every single week, and we actually don't know how much money they normally spend.
Yes.
We also don't know what kind of wine. I mean, the staff member in the bar might know what kind of wine they have, but everyone else may not.
Yes.
And so it's that leveraging of the system while not losing focus of what it means to the customer.
And you made a really good point there. Using that data, it is just something as simple as knowing what wine they like. And there's always that joke at every pub and club is that, the staff will know what the beer the person wants even before they know their name, and sometimes they never get to know their name. It's just that beer, and goodness forbid if they change it, because now you end up with a schooner full of something they don't want. But even that wine or that beer, it's important to know, yes, that one or perhaps two people know what Barry or or, Jane want. But when we share that knowledge, then that creates that ongoing consistency of that customer experience. And it's that wow. And we hear it time and time again from our guests in our industry who say, oh, oh, you're somebody new. Oh, yes, but I know that your favorite is whatever. And it's that feeling is, oh my goodness, this is the place I belong here. And it
Exactly
makes
right.
such a difference, doesn't it? Yeah.
It really does.
And it's understanding what those customers are looking for, and that surprise and delight. It can be something as simple as the chocolate freckle on the plate with the coffee. When it's their birthday, or a little one of those super dupers cut in half on a hot day while they're sitting outside. But it can be simple that costs you a few cents, or it could be something a lot more, or it could be just a smile and a moment to say how you're going,
Exactly right.
isn't it? And it's those changes. So the Australian hospitality industry has certainly made some massive shifts, over the last few years. Where do you see the industry heading, and particularly in terms of that customer expectations, including technology, which you've, spoken about, and talent attraction, and also retaining them, because they seem to attract them and then they go off for all sorts of reasons. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So look, I might start with talent. So what was really interesting was I didn't expect the challenge coming to South Australia in retaining and attracting talent. So, coming from Sydney, the population is significantly more in Sydney. South Australia is significantly smaller than that. A lot of competition between hospitality venues. And so the problems in attracting talent and also retaining talent are significantly more. And that's meant that we had to change our leadership style. So, how do we look after our people? How do we excite them? How do we encourage them? And so, but what's really quite interesting is that the basic needs of an employee in Sydney are no different than South Australia. So, they want to be remunerated, but they want to be acknowledged. They want to be looked after. They want to be treated equally and empowered. But they also want to be excited. And that's the thing that I love, which is that, if we're doing things at venue and we are making changes for the better, and we are creating amazing spaces like the Spritz Bar that you talked about, just watching our staff at the Alma in the last week, since we opened the Spritz Bar, you can just feel the energy across that venue. And so what was really interesting is that, that basic need of people wanting to come and work into a place that excites them is still as important as ever. And so it's constantly reminding people that we are going to create these amazing spaces and constantly push people. So that's a big one. There was an amazing article today in the newspaper from Justin Hemis regarding, the new development that they're doing, which, I obviously know little bits about it from when I was there. It's one of the most exciting projects I've seen. And he talks about the importance of having these small operators still coming in. I agree. I think that's really critical that red tape is reduced and that the economy and the laws are encouraging these smaller groups to come in and actually have a go, because that's where you're going to get innovation. In saying that, it's harder than ever, and I do think there's going to be more consolidation across the states. There's no doubt that a group like us can leverage our buying power and our systems to be able to provide amazing or better experiences at venue than a mum and dad operator can.
Yes.
So unfortunately, I think that's going to continue. Technology is really exciting. AI is really exciting. So we've really engaged AI a lot across the group here. And so rather than growing our support office, where we're always under pressure to maintain that support office cost and at a reasonable level, we're now leveraging AI as much as we possibly can. And that can be from menu engineering, inventory control, rostering, wage control. Big one is in terms of 7 rooms and restaurant bookings. So coming from Bankstown Sports, and Merivale, we had a Merivale is probably the classic example where we had a central restaurant reservation team. And so that team, via 7 rooms, anyone making a call for a restaurant booking, whether it's Mr. Wong or Tennyson or even at Lawn in Victoria, would come through that central reservations team.
Right.
And through use of 7 rooms, they could understand the needs of the customer, what they would normally like to eat, how important they are to the business, and make sure that their booking would be handled professionally. The issue with us with 26 pubs and the fact that we're much smaller than Merivale is that you could go to any of our pubs now and the phone will be ringing. We don't have the resources to be able to have a dedicated person at each one of those venues answering the phone, but I desperately would like that.
Yes.
And so the next step for us is actually doing a central reservations here in support office, but also leveraging AI.
Yes.
There's already AI systems out there that will basically do your whole booking for you. And other than the fact that their tone of their voice might be slightly different, and you might pick up the fact that they're an AI agent, the customer wouldn't really even know.
Yes.
In saying that, it is also important that we employ people, humans, and so we've got to get that balance right.
Yes.
I do see technology, though, and particularly AI, really transforming the space for support office, but we'll never lose sight of the fact that humans need humans.
Yes.
And providing that amazing customer experience and that sort of surprise and delight needs to come from humans. And so training, motivation, attracting talent will always be key.
Yes, yeah. And you're right. I think the opportunity to use technology in that back of house or that admin support is then going to free up the time for our amazing frontline staff to create those experiences because they'll be talking to people. And, that's why I've said time and time again, AI is a wonderful supporting resource. It's not just a pure replacement for a human. We all need connection. And we've certainly seen that, every pub and club is full of people talking to each other, sharing those experiences. So having that technology to support them so they can spend more time on the floor, I think is a beautiful win-win situation. And
I can give you another example to that. So we introduced a system called Wiley, which is basically a back of house system that helps manage floats and cash transactions within a venue. Previously, each one of our venues had an administration assistant, and that person would sit there for a number of hours each day and count the money and make sure that the floats were created and balanced and all the paperwork was created. We've replaced that role with Wiley, but we didn't make anyone redundant. Those people will then move to front of house, which allows us to do that surprise and delight and make sure that our customer experience to our customers is amazing.
Yes, yeah. If I can just ask you, if you can, whether you were there at the time, and that with those frontline people, when that comment was, "We're going to bring in this new program, and it's going to change your role." Was there that hesitation or that fear from staff, and how did you handle that?
Yeah, look, there always is. Resistance to change is significant, and particularly now when there's so much change so quickly, particularly with AI.
Yes.
And that's when leadership comes out. It's really important that all of us, including myself, are at actually telling people why we're doing this. When people understand the why, that resistance diminishes. I'm not saying it's going to disappear, but it does diminish. But if you try to implement a system without telling people why, then the fears will come through.
Yes.
And so it's really important. So, for example, 7 Rooms, we demoed to all of our team before we implemented the benefits and the things that we can do and how it can be used to provide that amazing customer experience. And that certainly reduced that fear.
Yes, yeah. And that's what it's all about. It's sharing them the why, but then showing them and then the lights go on because otherwise they're either going to white ant it or they're just a dippy downer and it just, implodes. So that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. You've talked about your pubs, in the metropolitan areas of having, Prince of Wales, etc., having these really strong communities. But we also know that a pub on every corner in every regional town in Australia is iconic. And, there are a lot that have closed and opened over the years, but every pub has got at least, every town's got at least one or more pub. And it's at heart of that community. What role do you believe regional hospitality plays in the broader industry? And how does Duxton support that sustainability of these venues?
Yeah, look, it's really interesting. So another learning experience with South Australia is that clubs are existent, but they're significantly smaller than Victoria and obviously significantly smaller than New South Wales and Queensland. So in fact, in many cases, they're non-existent in regions. So the pubs actually step up and become that community hub, which in New South Wales are served by pubs and clubs. Look, they're critical. They are the heart of those individual communities. They are the place that people will go and celebrate all of their special celebrations, whether it's birthdays, engagements, weddings. And so it's really important, and I talked about this before, that we don't lose sight of that community But the sustainability of those venues, the cost of living increases are significant, particularly in the regions. You know,
Yeah.
we've just we're still in it, I think, but hopefully we're coming out of a drought in South Australia and regional South Australia. And so we've seen in areas like Penola where farmers have really struggled, and that's affected the town. They're spending less, which means that the town is spending less, which means that there's less money going through our venues as well as others. And so that broader sustainability is, and that's, I guess, how we've managed to communicate with our staff, is that we can implement systems and we can leverage our buying power, then we can then hopefully improve our profitability at the venue, which makes us sustainable for the long term.
Yes.
And that's going to be very different to, say, a mum and dad pub. On the opposite side, there's this challenge where, as a group, we do want to leverage our buying power. But then the pub in Penola, for example, or Port Broughton, might be buying their current meat from the local butcher. And so taking that away from that local butcher to go to the state-based procurement system that we may have leveraged to get the best price. Yeah, that might get us the best price, but that's certainly not going to be great for the butcher in the town. And certainly the local community in that town won't be happy with that as well. So it's getting that balance right. And that's really tricky.
Yes.
And so what we've done is leverage the group buying power, but try to make sure that we continue buying at least some products from the local butcher or the local producer so that we maintain those relationships. The intention, of course, is so that that venue becomes and remains sustainable.
Yes, yeah. And when it's sustainable means it's there for the people, but it's also a high employer in the area as well, which is
Exactly right.
absolutely key. And then those people employed earn money and then spend more money in the town. So it's that real ripple effect. But it is important, as you said, to get that balance between the local producer, the local, the butcher, the baker, etc., in working with, organizations, because, once again, that'd be that fear from, small business or, this big person, this big business is coming into town, but sitting down and having those conversations allays some of those fears, but also keeps the community together, understanding that you're not just here to take over and, reap everything from them. It's connecting, and as we said, regional pubs are the cornerstone of every little town, whether they've got a couple of people or a couple of hundred, it's so very important. We're nearly at the end of our conversation. I'm sure we could talk for a lot longer, Mark, but I know you've always got, you're a busy person, but looking forward, what excites you most about the future of Duxton Pubs and more broadly, the opportunities emerging in Australian hospitality, over, in the sector over that next 5 to 10 years, if we had that crystal ball?
Yeah, so I mean, what excites me about Duxton Pubs is our goal. And this is a public news that the goal of Duxton Pubs is to IPO to list on the stock market at some point. To do that though, we need to scale, and so our investors are very proactive and supportive of us raising more capital, which will allow us to continue to acquire venues. What also excites me about that, while we are South Australian and we only own venues in South Australia and will be linked to South Australia, the opportunity for us to expand across the country is certainly a priority for us to look at. And we're currently working through how that might look at in the future. And so what that means and what excites me the most is that we potentially can become a significant player in Australia. We're already the second largest pub group in South Australia. But I hope to see us in 5 or 10 years' time to be a significant player in Australia, and that is our goal. In the hospitality sector, what's really pleased me in the last year or two, led by great hospitality specialists like Justin in Sydney, is that we've gone from hospitality prior to COVID to the lockdowns and all of the change that happened in Sydney to now this focus on nighttime economy. In some states like in New South Wales or in the city of Sydney, they have nighttime economy commissioners. And so the focus has now been on hospitality being really critical to the fabric of Australia
Yes.
and our communities. And so what I see that continuing to grow. And while there needs to be restrictions and laws to ensure that our customers are protected when in terms of intoxication and alcohol, I'm actually seeing a change, not only in South Australia, but in the country of governments actually encouraging development and improvement in the industry.
Yeah.
And that excites me. And it's tapped in with technology and groups like us making an impact across Australia. I think the 5 and 10 years is going to be really exciting for the hospitality industry in general.
It's certainly exciting times ahead. And here we are, we're going to have a pub group come out of South Australia and show the rest of Australia exactly how it's done. I love that.
Very excited about that.
It's wonderful. Mark, before we finish, is there something that I haven't asked you about Duxton Pub Group or even yourself, in the years of your knowledge in the industry that I haven't asked you that you'd like to share?
Probably just to, obviously I've been in this industry my whole life. I'm very passionate and love it. So probably just out to reaching out to anyone who's in the industry who's just starting off is learn from your mistakes. We all make them, but embrace the industry. It's an amazing industry, and think about the big picture. So if you're in a club or if you're in a pub or if you're like where I am now in private equity. The industry is very exciting, but broaden your knowledge. I've learned more in the last 5 years or so than I have in the previous 20 years at Bankstown. I mean, Bankstown gave me such a good grounding and it's such a special place for me, but I've learned so much since moving on. And I do encourage people to broaden their minds, think about the industry in general, and commit to it. It's such an exciting industry. You'll love it.
Yeah, it is. It's an amazing industry. I know when I stepped into it 31 years ago, I didn't know, well, even prior to that, I was, running functions at the Menzies Hotel in Sydney and the restaurant over in WA during the America's Cup. Little did I know I'd have this business for 3 decades plus and still going really strong in this beautiful industry. And it's the people. And, it's also, I feel, it's getting them to see what opportunities there are in this business, but also connecting, being like yourself, being around for so long, you're seeing people and you're going, do not reinvent the wheel. Let me connect you with so-and-so and you can have a conversation. And that's where I feel, particularly platforms such as LinkedIn, it is a great way to connect and learn from each other, but also share that knowledge because the pie is big enough for everybody in the hospitality industry and it's got plenty of opportunities no matter how old, how young or how experienced or not experienced that you are. Thank you so much, Mark, for spending some time with us. I know my listeners are really going to enjoy this episode and just hearing from you about your insights and wisdom on your leadership journey, but also with Duxton Pubs. And I wish you all the very best.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for having me.
Take care.
Yeah.